Hey everybody, welcome to this video, which covers a really interesting tool called CrossSeed. CrossSeed has just entered technically v6 pre-release, and so I want to go ahead and recreate a video all around the exciting changes of CrossSeed and v6. Now I want to go ahead and highlight that the CrossSeed website has an incredible compendium of resources, including a very lengthy FAQ and troubleshooting guide that I highly recommend you guys check out. This video is meant to be a supplement to this wiki guide, so don't just rely solely on the video. Let's not be allergic to reading. So go ahead and check out the crossseed.org guide. And of course, feel free to join the CrossSeed Discord for any other questions that may suit your needs that the video perhaps didn't cover. So what is CrossSeed? Simply speaking, when you get a torrent from one place, you'll want to be able to link it and seed it on another tracker without having to re-download that torrent. CrossSeed can run as a script, or it can run as something called Daemon mode, which runs 24/7. It searches for crossseeds as soon as new torrents are finished downloading, which you can set it up for that. One of the easiest ways to install CrossSeed is using something called community applications. Now, if you have previously seen my videos regarding setting up a media server, community applications should not be something very new to you. But here we're going to type CrossSeed. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the Ambi per repository, hit install, and let's look at the default template here. In your case, you guys would see it like this. I have a 1 here because I already have it installed. Now, instead of latest, I'm just going to put master so I can get on that v6.0.0. Otherwise, you're going to end up on 5.9.4, I believe. Now, here we have the config directory. Okay, let's go ahead and blow this up. So the configuration directory is simply where CrossSeed stores all its configurations, such as logs and torrent caches, etc. The torrent directory. This directory is utilized for torrent-based matching as it pertains to CrossSeed. This will point to the directory containing torrent files using whatever download indexer you're using. So if you look at the following directories for QBitTorrent, in our case here, we're going to use this directory, .local.share data backup. Since I am using QBitTorrent in a Docker path, I'm going to just simply be referring to the config container path that is present in my QBitTorrent install, in my case, app data. The output directory is where torrents get saved if you use the save action as part of CrossSeed. CrossSeed comes with 2 actions, inject and save. So when it finds matches, it can save them into an output directory, or it can inject them for you. In addition, if a searchy injection ever fails, it utilizes output directory to retrieve the injections until it's successful. Because we enabled CrossSeed's injection behavior, we have to also be cognizant of something called Linkdr. Linkdr is essentially where CrossSeed, once it finds a suitable candidate for the searchee and it injects it into your torrent client of choice, is where it creates either a symbolic link or a hard link to a file. My Linkdr is actually located inside of the data-dir. For here, the container path is defined as /data/torrents. And this is where we get persistent. We're doing /mount, /user, /data/torrents. Linkdr, for me, is /data, /torrents, /cross-seeds folder. Because I defined data-dir, I don't have to define Linkdr in the container. I went ahead and pretty much did 2 birds, 1 stone here. If I do want to point to data-dirs, which will be covered later in terms of database matching, then I can do that as well. And this way I can be more selective if I want movies or TV as the folder that is going to be utilized for data-dirs attribute in the configuration file. One of the things we want to ensure is that we have proper user and group permissions, 99 and 100. And one other thing that we want to add is probably restart unless stopped. The container restarts itself unless you have explicitly stopped it. Post arguments is Daemon. One of the cool parts about unRAID's Docker container is that it by default runs Daemon, aka 24/7 for the script. It is not a per run default like CrossSeed would be if you weren't using unRAID's Docker. When you run the CrossSeed container for the first time, it will automatically create a configuration file. If it doesn't, then this probably indicates user permission issues, and you should probably look into that before moving further. CrossSeed, like most Docker applications, utilize the app data directory to store its configuration files that are important for its function. Here, we have the CrossSeed configuration file. And at the very top of this file is Torsnap. Torsnap URLs, if you aren't familiar, are utilized by popular programs such as Jacket and Prowler, which essentially output the RSS feed of a certain indexer or torrent site on a web interface that therefore can be leveraged by CrossSeed to find certain candidates. So the first thing you're going to want to do is add your indexers. Here I have added 2, indexer number 6 and 7, and I've made sure to reference CrossSeed in terms of 9696 and its local name on Docker, considering that I have CrossSeed on the same network bridge as Prowler. As we can see here in the options page for CrossSeed's wiki, you need Torsnap, it's required. You need a torrent directory and an output directory for CrossSeed search. One of the very first things we want to do after we add our indexers is to determine the behavior of CrossSeed once it finds certain torrents that are cross-seedable. Here, I'm going to use QBitTorrent setup under direct client injection to change my action option to injection, and finally set the QBitTorrent URL so that CrossSeed can connect to QBitTorrent. So here under the configuration file, we're going to change action to inject. And lastly, make sure that the QBitTorrent URL has the username, the password in my case, rulawawa, and then finally the local instance. So we're going to not put @localhost, but instead use the name that CrossSeed sees under the network mode. And then finally, the port. When CrossSeed injects a verified candidate from a certain searchy torrent, it utilizes the tag of cross-seed. We can, however, make use of the option duplicate categories to append the original torrent's category into the tag. So for example, here we would have a movies.crossseed appended. This way you can have more organization across your torrent library instead of getting lost with generics. As of version 6, Radarr is no longer something that you really need to worry about. There's only 2 use cases where you need to worry about Radarr. Is one, if you're utilizing Usenet to somehow get Usenet files and cross-seed those over to trackers, or 2, where you might have certain media libraries outside of where your download client is pointed to, which I don't even really like as a setup, but in case that happens, then you can have it index and search your media libraries folder, in which case those would be considered Radarr. And even then, you don't want to run it multiple times, because the odds of you finding a torrent to cross-seed after its initial search across multiple trackers is pretty low. The one thing we want to focus on as well is what sort of match mode do we want? CrossSeed offers 2 types of match modes. Well, it did, but as a V6, it now offers a partial match mode, which utilizes something called fuzzy logic, fuzzy size logic threshold, or in this case, fuzzy size threshold, to essentially allow it to download 99% of a torrent or 98% of a torrent, the whole behavior being for partial matches that you might only have missing subtitles or even sample files. So you want to probably cross-seed those and maybe just download the sample files and the subtitle files, and that way you can cross-seed that way. Other than that, we have safe mode. Safe mode is technically the default, which matches based on size and requires release groups to match as well to snatch for further comparison in terms of candidates and searchees. Risky, however, only bases on size. If there's release groups present, it'll compare them, but it will just go ahead and snatch it anyways if one or both are missing. Remember, whether you're doing safe, risky, or partial, I myself do risky match mode, all of them look at size, and fuzzy size threshold will allow you to have 2% size variance. You don't really need to change this setting, but it's something to be aware of because it's going to increase the number of torrents that you're possibly going to grab, or the number of candidates it's not going to reject as much. So that can lead to a lot more grabbing. This does lead to some important concern in terms of grabbing torrents from certain indexers and how many of them you're grabbing. This would be an excellent time to mention to you guys that your tracker can get really, really mad at you if you snatch too many .torrent files. I actually had this happen to me. I got banned on a really popular torrent site that said I grabbed a crap load of .torrent files. Now, it wasn't related to CrossSeed, but it is a good little side note here. So again, this is where we want to reduce the number of unnecessary snatches of .torrent files as much as possible. Include non-video files. You can also utilize exclude older and exclude recent search. We're going to cover that in detail later. And then of course, you can always, the final limiters that you can do is search limit and also search cadence. Now let's get back into injection behavior and how CrossSeed really functions on the back end. And to begin it, we're going to go back to Linkdr. So remember, Linkdr is essentially creating pseudo structures. If a torrent file structure is not a perfect match to another torrent of the same movie or TV show on another tracker, it can utilize symlinks or hardlinks, depending on which you chose. I chose hardlinks to create that pseudo structure so that it can detect it as the same torrent with the same structure so that it can cross-seed. There's one attribute that I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, called flat linking. Flat linking is determining the folder structure of the Linkdr symbolic or hard links, how it's essentially creating it. With v5 prior did not create indexer folders for certain torrents. This would sometimes lead to conflicts, but however, with v6, now each individual Torsnap tracker's cross-seeds will have its own folder with the tracker name and its relevant hard links or symlinks within it. If you're using force automatic torrent management in something like QBitManage, you want to pay attention to this setting. As defined in the v6 migration guide, if you are using QBitTorrent to force auto TMM, you have to enable flat linking for cross-seed linking to work. However, if you aren't using it and you have force auto TMM on false with QBitManage, then you should definitely keep it to false and set flat linking here to false. This will create those indexer folders. Now, once we've determined the match mode we want to use and the Linkdr path that we want to use and also the link type, hard link or symlink, symbolic links, we're going to also do something called link category. This is the category that the torrents injected utilize. So we want to put whatever name we want. For my instance, I created one just called CrossSeed. I want to note one thing, that my QBitTorrent uses something called automatic torrent management. So when it uses automatic torrent management, anything that you create for the categories, it will create a subfolder. In my case, it created a subfolder called cross-seeds. But whatever category you set for that in your torrent client doesn't matter. Only the one in the configuration does. Now, if you're using QBitManage, however, to force auto torrent management on every torrent, including the CrossSeed ones, without filtering out for those as an excluded tag on the QBitManage configuration file, then yes, you want to pay attention to the category that you assigned in link category and also to where that points in your torrent client. Now that we realize how to link CrossSeed to Torsnap to search our indexers for potential candidates, how to set up CrossSeed's container, and we've defined the match mode, safe, risky, partial, in addition to the action that CrossSeed takes between inject or safe, in our case, we did inject. We can now finally move on to what I like to call as search parameters, or how we can control the behavior of how often CrossSeed searches and, moreover, how it searches. So one of the first things we have to look at in regards to that is something known as RSS cadence. So when you utilize CrossSeed, RSS cadence is the value that runs RSS scans on a schedule. This is usually set to between 10 to 30 minutes, minimum of 10 minutes to 30 to make sure nothing gets missed. However, if something does get missed, there is something called search cadence, which runs searches on a schedule rather than RSS scans. So this is something that would mostly not be run every other day. It's something to be run in case something falls through the cracks. In my case, we set it to 2 weeks, which I believe is the default, but I might be wrong on this one. Part of the discussion that involves CrossSeed's search pattern would also include the exclude commands. Exclude older and exclude recent search. This controls primarily how CrossSeed treats searchees and which torrents it tries to attempt to find candidates for. For these parameters, however, I'm going to go ahead and reference you all to the Wiki guide instead of covering it in this video. One of the magical points of CrossSeed in Daemon mode specifically is the ability to set up automatic searches for finished downloads the minute they're finished. So, how does that work? Well, first of all, we need to find our API key. This is a key that is used primarily for CrossSeed and it gets generated automatically. You can define it in the options as well, but it's up to you. I myself am okay with having the program define it more secure, super long digits, and all that good stuff. So the way we first do it is we get our CrossSeed key using docker exec it CrossSeed sh. First time when you run CrossSeed, give it a little while to stabilize before you run it. If you attempt to run this from within the Docker, it may not work. A workaround that you can use is set the delay in the configuration option to 300. This will prevent CrossSeed from actually attempting to run for at least 300 seconds so that you can run this in the unRAID console command. And then finally, once you shell into your container, you can CrossSeed API key, and then you're going to get an API key. Once you get that API key, depending on your client, please check the wiki. You're going to enter it into the program in terms of something that it will run upon completion. Now, obviously there's a script as well known as the import R script if you're using R programs to make your media downloads that also trigger CrossSeed as well. And that's something that's covered on the wiki. I'm not going to cover that here. But in terms of QBitTorrent, all you need to do is go into QBitTorrent's web UI, go to Tools Options, and choose Info Hash. There is a data path for those people that are attempting to use just data-based matching mode. However, default behavior and recommendation is info hash equals %i. Make sure you fill in your API key and hit save. QBitTorrent will execute CrossSeed with an XPost request to the API at the port 2468 that CrossSeed runs on, which is known as HTTP CrossSeed 2468. Once it receives that, it will scour all your indexers based on the ones that you added for Torsnap, and then add the relevant cross-seeded torrents, depending on the save mode that you chose. In our case, we did Inject, so it's going to automatically inject that. One of the really nice features of V6 is now its ability to utilize the media libraries of Sonarr and Radarr for ID lookups, which is incredible. Specifically, it can look through all query instances for metadata from either TVDB, TMDB, IMDB, and TVMaze IDs. These can be used on the supported indexers to allow it to search for candidates more accurately and completely. You don't really have to do much else other than add the Sonarr option and the Radarr option, whether through a list, etc. if you have a 4K Sonarr or an HD Sonarr, give or take. And remember to add the one that has the most titles first, in the order of importance, of course. At the end of this video, I'll be speaking with one of the developers, Zachary, in terms of popular questions that a lot of viewers might have regarding the transition from V5 to V6 that maybe the migration video didn't cover, and just some cool features that they wanted to highlight about V6. Coming up right now. All right, Zach, thanks for answering my questions. Question 1. V6 has a slew of changes. One of the most exciting I can think of that I remember being discussed since V5 is linking behavior. In the past, torrent-based matching needed a perfect match in terms of the structure of the searchee to create a potential cross-seed candidate match. CrossSeed didn't allow any linking behavior as it pertained to torrent-based searches. One had to use database matching for this. So how has it changed in V6?
So previously, linking only worked with database matching, which offered pretty big benefits in the way of the flexibility of the matching, such as when some of the torrents contained folders and others didn't, or the files were renamed. Torrent matching only supported what we called perfect matches, which were exact structure and file name matches. In version 6, we've expanded and enhanced the same linking behavior you saw in version 5 with database matching, now onto torrents. Now you can just set up your Linkdr, and as long as CrossSeed has access to the paths and the data that your torrent client has, those two will be able to be matched and linked in a more versatile way. This opens up the possibility to use risky and the new partial match modes with torrent-based matching as well as data-based if necessary. All the previous limitations we had with nested folders to single file or single file to nested have also been fixed, and we're really proud of these improvements.
Hey, I'm proud of you guys too. I've been waiting for that feature for a while, and I'm just glad I no longer have to just do database matching. Okay, question 2. Does output dirt still get used for injection failure fallback? What is the best way to utilize output dir as it pertains to CrossSeed?
Output dir currently is used for two things. Obviously, the save action will save the torrent files to it, or if injection fails for some reason. This can be because linking wasn't possible, sometimes because of renamed files in the torrent client that don't match up with the original torrent file. Sometimes it's just because your client goes down for some reason or is currently unreachable. Currently, these torrent files will be saved, and we have a feature coming down the pipeline that will retry these saved torrents, as well as utilize the output dir for automated resuming of torrents that are added, end up completed, and then would otherwise be paused. Since these torrents end up at 100%, the output dir will be used as like a reference for what needs to be watched in the client, potentially to resume later.
Okay, very cool. So output directory is basically a safety fallback in case anything goes wrong. What will you guys think of next? Okay, moving on. Question number 3. What is the benefit of the block list? Can you provide a use case for where someone would want a certain torrent to not be utilized for CrossSeed lookups?
There are a few use cases that immediately come to mind. First, if you have certain content such as sports, think UFC or like MotoGP, that you know is only available on one of your trackers, you can add these keywords to your block list and it will omit them from searching. Another is if your tracker has some exclusive internal releases that you don't want to like spread or be a part of the swarm on another tracker, you may want to add that specific group to the block list to prevent yourself from being one of those people seeding these on other trackers, since it would most likely get automatically added to your client and you may not notice it immediately or at all. You can also add specific info hashes for problematic torrents if one crops up. Mostly it's about versatility and flexibility. I'm sure there are people out there who will never use this, but for anybody who does need it, it's definitely a valuable addition to the feature set.
Gosh, you make it sound so necessary that I just feel like blocking a bunch of groups right now. Anyways, question number 4. Is there any specific torrent client you find works best for CrossSeed? Any torrent clients that you feel give CrossSeed more trouble? If so, is it only from a development standpoint or is it also from a user case standpoint?
Anyone who knows me knows that I'm not the type of guy to try to push my client choice on others, but I will say that I find my needs are best met by Deluge. I've been using it for well over a decade and am currently part of the team there, so I am a bit biased, but I think we have a pretty well-rounded dev team at the moment. Because I use Deluge, we have another dev that uses Qbit and another rTorrent. Except for transmission, which is the least popular client amongst our user base, we have pretty much everything covered. Each of us has our own client and expertise in it. I will say that in working on version 6, most of our client troubles stemmed from Qbit, particularly with the new linking behavior and tags and categories, and especially auto torrent management. These changes we've had to make as a result, it's just been a lot. In the first pre-release that we did, it was quite a headache, but we got through it. As far as from a user perspective, since those growing pains from the initial releases are overcome now, I don't think there's really any problems with Qbit that can't be addressed with just small workflow changes.
Got it. So every other client other than Deluge is horrible. Okay, good to know. Just kidding. Okay, moving on to question number 5. Lastly, what do you all hope to do for versions past V6? Anything major that you wish was implemented in V6 that just didn't make the cut this time around?
Well, we still have quite a few rather significant features left that I'm excited for everyone to see. We've been working hard for months on this. Even prior to the pre-release, things were being done. I think my first feature was merged back at the end of November, so it's been a long time in the works. Looking past the major features we still have coming, we kind of see most of our time being spent on quality of life and feature requests. We obviously want to get SQLite for QBitTorrent integrated, and everyone keeps asking about WebUI. But besides those two, any bug fixes that crop up, and a slew of niche feature requests, I'm not sure where things are headed, but I'm sure we'll think of something.
Well, I'm sure you guys will. WebUI sounds really cool. Thanks for your time, Zach. Appreciate everything.
Sure thing. Anytime.
Special thanks to Zach for the Q&A, which is just super awesome. It was great to just pick his mind at things a little bit. And if you have any other questions regarding CrossSeed, make sure to check out the handy dandy CrossSeed guide located on cross-seed.org, or even check out the cool Discord located right at the top of the website right here. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. See you on the next one.